Welcome to Do More with Less with Microsoft 365, live from Chicago, Illinois. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us online. Really pleased to be back here with another in our Fall in Love series. My name is Richard Akerman. I'm a partner at Reply, and I'd like to just take 90 seconds to tell you a little bit about Reply. So we're Reply, a global technology consultancy made up of over 150 smaller consultancies, each with their own specialism. So we've got companies like SagePath Reply in Atlanta for Adobe and Cisco Plan Reply in Philadelphia for SAP. This is great for our projects because it means we've always got the technology expertise within our group to call upon should we need it. At the start of this year, we merged the modern work team of Valorem Reply with WM Reply to build one world-class modern work consultancy here at Valorem Reply. And we're solely focused on that Microsoft 365 ecosystem, plus Viva, plus our accelerator product. And a large community of us are change managers using ADKAR and ProSci. Valorem Reply has all 6 solution partner designations, including modern work, and we have modern work advanced specializations for ACM and custom solutions in Teams. Now today, in a moment, I'll be passing over to Annie, who will be introducing the topic of Do More with Less. Then we've got Marcus and Bill, who will be showing us how we can do more with less with collaborative apps, and specifically an app called Converge that'll help reduce and minimize office space. Caitlin and Isaac will be showing us a day in the life of with Viva, focusing on some of the free elements or the included elements of the Viva suite. We're very lucky to then have a special guest speaker. Chui Chong from Microsoft will be joining us. He'll be talking about some research from McKinsey and how Viva is the perfect side dish. And then we can't do a talk on Do More with Less without mentioning ChatGPT and generative AI. So will be talking about how Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, Viva, and Power Platform can really help us to achieve more. And we'll finish with our panel, where we're joined with Rochelle Henderson from a major US telco, and Peter Zoki from CF Industries, as well as Chui Chong, who will be able to answer any of your questions. So if you do have any questions during today's talk, please post them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Now, let's start with what do we mean by do more with less?
Thank you so much, Richard. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Lee. I'm a senior consultant in our adoption change management team here at Valorem Reply. And as Richard mentioned, today's presentation is really focused on do more with less. But as we get started with this, it's good to just have everyone on the same page and understanding what do we mean by do more with less and what kind of impact does that really have? So as a Microsoft 365 consultancy, we truly believe that Microsoft 365 is an extensive and powerful enough of a platform to really drive most, if not all, of our collaborative work. So when we talk about doing more with less, we're talking about evaluating the technical landscape within an organization and seeing how we can reduce the number and cost of applications that are having duplicative functionality with those that we're already leveraging with Microsoft 365. So all in all, just thinking of how we can optimize our use of Microsoft 365 to really make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck. Some of you might be thinking, well, we just got to this kind of stable state with our technological landscape. I mean, the pandemic obviously disrupted everything, and we really had to adjust from there. Why would we disrupt what we've got going on today to focus more on Microsoft 365? Well, I want to bring some numbers into the discussion here today. So Okta's recent business review report found that The average large organization today has 187 different applications deployed within their organization centered on, facilitating and enabling work within their workforce. This is a huge number of applications, and it's up significantly from only 58 applications per large organization in 2015. So obviously with the pandemic and even in the years beforehand, the number of applications in the technological landscape has been growing. But what Okta's report also found was that within that 187 apps, actually 30% of those applications had duplicative or redundant functionality. So this means that there's a lot of room to really consolidate and focus on what's most important and how we can do more with less. Now, redundant functionality does have an impact really on the workforce and the employee experience. From a larger workforce perspective, we're aiming to facilitate collaboration and an easy working digital experience, but oftentimes we're actually creating these knowledge and data silos, and we're making it difficult to manage the sheer number of applications in use at an organization. So an easy area of impact to imagine would be security. From a governance standpoint, 187 applications is a huge number of apps to manage, and having to think about how people are using them. Are they using them in the correct ways? Are they being properly managed on the back end? And then of course we have budget considerations. With that number of applications, we know that there is a tremendous number of different licenses and their associated costs that are playing a role here as well. But more than anything, we're really stifling the things that we want to enable the most for our workforce, and that's collaboration and communication. With so many different applications, we're often impacting our workforce with this sort of tool paralysis, this which tool when, that keeps them from being able to quickly choose and decide exactly what tools they should be using for, I don't know, joining a virtual meeting, collaborating with colleagues, working on files together, all these sorts of collaborative tasks. And what this creates is a fragmented digital employee experience. So there is a people impact to this, of course, as well, alongside technology. We have this experience where folks are increasingly distracted and again, unable to kind of choose for this themselves, what is the best tool to use for my use case and to do so in a timely manner. And because of this tool sprawl, we're making it more difficult for folks to engage with us as team members and leaders in our daily work. And all of these elements come together to impact retention and attrition. There's really this large impact that having this huge number of applications and this tool paralysis can create. And with that, not only is the impact, financial, it's also psychological. So when we talk about context switching or toggling between different applications, a recent Harvard Business Review study looked at 3 Fortune 500 companies and found that teams within them tended to, at an individual basis, toggle between websites and applications a staggering 1,200 times per day. I cannot even imagine doing anything 1,200 times a day, let alone switching between different applications and windows in my browser. So if we think about this context switching, there's also time associated with this. Let's say that it takes maybe 2 to 3 seconds for us to switch between these different applications and windows, both in terms of physical time, making those clicks, but also the psychological context switching that we need to do before we're able to move on to our next window effectively. If we compile all of that time along with this sheer volume of different toggles per day, we're actually looking at 4 hours per working week, which equals 5 working weeks per year. And if we think about that, that's 10% of an average employee's working time. So if we think about an average salary of an employee at perhaps $80,000, we're looking at $8,000 of time per employee per year spent on really just managing the various different applications we use and getting from place to place to do our work. So really, not only is there a people impact, a security and larger workplace context impact, this is how that employee experience behavior translates into time and the bottom line. So really, let's reduce the amount of applications and redundant functionality that we're acquiring, and let's let Microsoft 365 do the heavy lifting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Marcus, to talk a little bit more about how we can do more with less with collaborative apps in Microsoft Teams. Marcus, over to you.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, so today we want to talk about collaborative apps. My name is Marcus Rule. I am a modern work lead with Valorem Apply, and really we wanted to really explain what collaborative apps are and why they matter. And so before we get into what they are, let's talk about why they should be on all of our minds if you don't already know about them, right? So digital transformation still remains the #1 priority for CIOs. And in fact, 85% of companies are currently, in the last year, have been focusing on digital transformation, especially around employee experience and collaboration. And 67% of companies have accelerated their automation and artificial intelligence with workflows in the last year. And so it's a very relevant topic. And so again, what are collaborative apps? They're really applications that are accessed through the users within Microsoft Teams. And as we know, Teams has really become the hub for everything collaboration and the hub for really many of the workflows that people do on a day-to-day basis, right? And so what collaborative apps do is really extends that power of Teams and allows us to bring very specific use cases and workflows inside of Teams that allow people to do their day jobs more efficiently, saving time and doing more with less. And one of the beauties of collaborative apps are that because they are accessed through Teams, they inherit all the security permissions, all the goodness that you already have controlled in your M365 environment without doing the extra work that you'd have to do with a pure custom app outside of Teams. So one of the things that for collaborative apps, that a lot of people haven't necessarily heard about them, but what you don't realize is that, or what they may not realize is that there's a ton of collaborative apps that are very popular today. And through the Teams store, you'll see a lot of these names that are probably recognized, plus hundreds and hundreds more that are available today through Teams. In fact, we've seen nearly 170% increase in the number of apps available through Teams in the last 12 months. So really, when we think about collaborative apps, what are they really? Well, everyone, for the most part, has probably heard of Power Platform. If you haven't, it's really a collection of Power tools, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, Dataverse, and AI Builder that Microsoft makes available across M365 and Dynamics. And the power of these is that once you build one of these applications, you can bring it into Teams, make it available to all your users, whether it's within a specific Teams channel, broadly available across all Teams, or within chats. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the different types of collaborative applications that are out there. So as I mentioned, Tabs apps, a lot of you have seen those. There's both first-party and third-party tab apps that are available within a channel. Bots, same thing. There are many different ways, different types of bots out there, and you can also build custom bots using both Power Platform and the bot framework within Azure. There's messaging extensions, task modules, in-meeting apps, right? Ways to extend and customize meetings for your specific organization. There's webhooks, connectors. We already talked about Power Platform, but and a lot of these apps tap into the power of the Microsoft Graph, which is the data structure underneath M365 that allows you to do all kinds of cool stuff. In fact, Bill is going to be giving a demo of one of these applications in a bit. So, but again, really, this is about providing options to your users and really customizing those end user experiences, again, to make your employees more productive, happier, whether they're frontline workers, whether they work back office information workers, there's an app for them. So let's talk a little bit about hybrid work. So again, what hybrid work is something that is on almost every CIO's mind today, right? Coming out of COVID, there's very many different types of scenarios, whether they're coming out of COVID, folks were coming back to the office, part-time, mid-time, full-time, or trying to manage the challenge of having a bunch of remote employees that they had hired over the pandemic that they're now trying to bring into the fold and allow them to collaborate and communicate in a very seamless way with the folks that are in the office. And in fact, as part of this, really companies are looking for ways to provide more flexible policies to attract and retain employees. And 81% of leaders today are in the process of adapting or changing those policies to optimize this approach. Also, the in-person, collaboration culture to a hybrid environment is super important, right? So you want to provide those flexible work options, but how do you make it feel like they're actually part of the team and have the same connection as the folks that are there in the room during meetings, or whether you're working within a team or a group? 73% of employees care about this, and they really want to make sure that they have that opportunity, if they're remote or if they're in the office, to feel connected, right? And again, we've seen a 45% increase in weekly Teams chats per person. So what this tells you is that it's happening. People are collaborating. People are using Teams to provide that connected experience. So with that, I would like to bring Bill Felker up to actually give you a demo of a really cool collaborative app that we built in conjunction with Microsoft. Bill?
Thank you, Marcus. Hello, I'm Bill Felker. I'm a collaborative apps lead, and today I'm going to talk about an app called Converge. But first, let's talk a little bit about why this app was even developed. So this app was developed for a company, a large outdoor, company retailer, who built a brand new building for their headquarters right before the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, all their workers weren't coming into the office, and they were having this large expense of an office. So they had to find a way to, utilize the space. Well, what happened was they sold the building. So then they only had enough space for their workers, for 1 in 10 workers, to be in the office at any one time. So they said, how can we do this and make it work for our employees? And so they found a way. They wrote or built an app collaboratively with Microsoft that actually found locations, allowed employees to come in, find locations to work in shared workspaces. They're able to reserve those workspaces through the app. So they didn't have to go into Outlook, reserve a workspace, go into Teams to start a collaboration meeting. It was all done in one place. And so it was a great way to do it. It brought a lot of benefits where they were able to utilize some of their workspaces better, and then to also make it a more collaborative experience for their employees. So let's start going into the presentation or the demo. All right. So what I'm going to show you is Converge. So this is the home screen as Converge opens up. And the important thing about this is that right on the home screen, we see a dashboard of getting connected to our colleagues. And so here you see the dashboard with this current week up. And with the current week, I can actually go in, I can meet with a colleague. So in the center here, you can see, I'm trying to get my mouse to work here. There we go. I'm in the office on Thursday, and then I'm remote on Friday. And so I can look down here and I can actually look and see the different employees who are also in the office. If I click on them, I can actually go straight into creating a collaborative event with them. So it allows me to very easily go in and make a collaboration with my coworkers. On top of that, we said, hey, this is really important. How can we make all of these things work? So one of the things that people like to do is to say, how do I set my settings? So as a hybrid worker, I have the ability to change my settings. I can say what zip code I'm in. So it helps with collaborating outside of the office. And then I also have a default building. We have multiple locations. I can choose which building I'm in. And then down below, in the same place, I can look in and I can say, which days will I be in the office, so that I can plan ahead. So if I have a planned schedule, I'll be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I can set it up here. I can always change this in the future, but it gives me a quick way to make these settings and these changes. There's also some other additional settings, like an admin setting, where I can actually, if I'm an admin, I can go in and do some app banner, or even enable or disable workspaces. This is all just as another ability for users or for admins. So I'm going to jump in and also show you another tab that we created, and that's called Teammates. What this does is it allows me to say, with people that I collaborate very frequently with, I can then set up a collaboration with them by clicking in here. If I say, hey, wait, I'm also starting to collaborate with someone else, I can do all. I can do a search. I can search for Lee, hit enter. Just from there, I can even add him to my list. So he's now in my favorites. So the next time I come in and I look at my favorites, I'll have Lee here as well. So this also does where I can actually set up meetings when I'm in the office. But let me jump over to the Collaborate tab, because this is where some of the magic can really happen. I can search for teammates. So if I didn't choose them from the first screen, I can also do it from right here. I can type in Isaiah. When he pops up, now I can see where Isaiah's at on the map. So you can see the integration that we also created with Bing Maps. And then I'm also going to show some other integration where in the select a venue, I can choose Parks and Recreation, and I can actually choose a different location that's in between the two of us, and I can create the event. So here I'm going to show you where we're actually creating the event within Teams. I'm not going out to Outlook. I'm not going anywhere else, but I'm going in here and I'm actually going to go ahead and just create a quick meeting. From right there, you can see I've got Isaiah on there. I set a time for it. Notice the location is the location that I chose. And then when I click confirm, what this is doing is it's going out to the Microsoft Graph. It's pulling in and it's going ahead and creating the meeting for me. And so you can see up in the upper right, a pop-up message came up. Hey, you've created a meeting with Isaiah. So we're in really good shape here. He's done a really good job. He's created the meeting with Isaiah and he's ready to move on. And so what this does is it gives you a great way to meet. And one of the things I didn't point out is it does a predictive way of finding people that you should work with. So it goes in a predictive service that runs in the background that says, hey, this person's available, you're in the same building, we can connect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Marcus.
Thank you, Bo. Yeah, and just a couple of notes on Converge. One of the coolest parts of Converge is that because we have all the code and complete, ready to go, we can deploy this within and have it fully functional in a pilot or a production environment within 2 weeks. And so, and from there, we can do any kind of customizations on top of it, which we've already done with a number of different clients. So if you have any interest in Converge, would like to see a demo, please reach out to us after this event, and we will set that up. So Converge is just one example of a collaborative app. We just wanted to, and that focused on hybrid work, wanted to just kind of make sure that it was clear that this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? We've deployed dozens and dozens of these types of apps around request management for creation of internal resources, resource provisioning, for whether it's SharePoint sites, other M365 tools, or it could be really anything across M365, task management, performance reviews, incident and loss reporting, accident injuries, great for manufacturing, frontline workers, et cetera. And then in-person collaboration and facilitation, right? And this is the thing that we just showed you with Converge. And so, again, any questions at all around collaborative apps, we have a team of experts like Bill that would be happy to talk to you. So with that, I would like to welcome Annie Lee back to the stage to talk about Viva.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Great to be back with you, everyone. So now we're going to do a bit of a theme switch, moving away from thinking about doing more with less with collaborative apps and shifting to talk about Viva and the employee experience that Viva is really all about. So Viva, probably one of the hottest topics to come through with Microsoft in the last several years. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, and many of you have also probably implemented components of Viva in your own digital workspaces. But today we're going to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about how we can do more with less with Viva and how we can get the most value out of it for our frontline and information workers. All right, let's get started. So Microsoft Viva is Microsoft's employee experience platform, really born out of this consideration of the worth it equation. What makes it worth it for employees to work at an organization, to contribute productive work to that organization, and to be engaged there as well? So in Microsoft's research and studying of this worth it equation, they've broken down the employee experience into 4 key pillars: connection, insight, purpose, and growth. So we'll take a moment here to just break down each and every one of them. Starting with connection, we all know as employees that it is really important for each of us to feel connected to our work, to our colleagues, to a community at work, but then not only that, to feel connected to the vision, the wider goals and vision of the organization. So with connection, we really want to bring that element in so that we can communicate effectively with our workforce and help them feel a part of what we're doing at any organization. With insight, they found that 75% of employees and actually even 80% of managers felt that their company didn't solicit feedback often enough. So especially, as Marcus was talking about this hybrid work environment that we're many of us at least, a part of today, we need to make sure that we're able to make employees feel heard and seen, but then also get our own insight into the working habits of our teams today. With purpose, again, as employees, it's important to feel that our day-to-day work is going into and contributing to the wider goals of the organization. So if we have found that 81% of employees feel that it's important that their managers help them prioritize their workload, what this means is that people managers and team leaders really need to put more of an emphasis on helping each individual in a team feel that they are contributing to that greater mission and that their daily work does so as well. And then lastly, with growth, 76% of employees say that they would stay at their company longer if they felt that they had learning and development support. So again, when we're thinking about employee engagement and employee experience, growth and development opportunities are a huge reason for people to be productive, engaged, and to stay at their companies. And so we need to help them feel that they can really take their learning into their own hands and that we've got an infrastructure to help support them in this. And so really out of that, Microsoft Viva was born. And if we feel like we can move the needle on these 4 various pillars of engagement, there's a whole load of benefits that could come with this, both in terms of productivity, but also in terms of financials. But there's a bit of a gap here today. So today, only 15% of global employees say that they feel engaged at work. We want to up that number because highly engaged employees are 12 times more likely to stay at their organizations. And organizations that do have an engaged workforce actually have 23% greater profitability. So there's huge benefits to be reaped from having an engaged workforce. And we really need to help folks feel more engaged and more a part of that employee experience. And cue Microsoft Viva. So Viva is really there to bridge that gap and to help people feel more engaged and a part of that employee experience. They're looking to use technology through Viva to bring together these various pillars of employee experience and engagement. So for example, helping share the purpose and overall alignment of an organization through things like communications and culture building, making knowledge and expertise more accessible for everyone throughout the business, and giving people opportunities to have learning and development be more of a part of their everyday work. And then lastly, helping people feel seen and heard with insights, and helping people feel also that they're supported at work in their own well-being and that we want them all to succeed as a whole. So with that, that's a little bit of the why around Microsoft Viva, and hopefully those topics are resonating with all of you. Now let's shift from the why to the what. What is Microsoft Viva? In actuality, Microsoft Viva is a collection of apps, also known as modules, that are all connected together and surfaced to our employees in Microsoft Teams. And again, same as with the collaborative apps being in Microsoft Teams, it's important to bring these digital tools into the flow of work and help people, prevent that context switching that I was talking about earlier that has that time, psychological, and financial toll. Keeping it all in Microsoft Teams helps people engage with it even more and feel more at ease with their own digital platforms. I won't spend time today, unfortunately, walking through each and every one of these different apps and modules that make up Microsoft Viva, but you'll be able to see some of them in action with our day in the life demo here shortly. I do want to make a few specific call outs though. So out of the applications that are shown here on this slide, a couple of them are not yet what we call GA, or generally available. If we see down in the lower left, Viva Amplify is currently in private preview, and Viva Amplify is really going to work alongside things like your SharePoint Online Intranet, or perhaps your business social platform in Microsoft 365 to centralize communications management in one place in Microsoft Teams. And Viva Amplify is set to become generally available this summer or fall. Similarly, Viva Pulse is also going to be generally available later this year, and Pulse is really oriented around getting the pulse, if you will, on an organization. So getting those kind of frequent, regular bits of feedback from your teams to help give leaders an indication of how their teams and the entire workforce is doing. So those both are going to be generally available later this year. And on a separate note, we've got this module here, Viva Sales. This is kind of in a different wheelhouse of its own in that Viva Sales is a module that is specific for a particular type of role within an organization. It's destined for salespeople, and it comes along with its separate licensing and kind of a whole separate way of usage, but it is still brought into Microsoft Teams, again, to round out that Viva Suite experience in Teams. So alongside Viva Sales and talking about separate licensing, I do also want to mention that not all of the apps that you see on this slide are available with your typical Microsoft Enterprise or Frontline licenses. But as today's theme is do more with less, we do really want to focus and highlight those Viva apps that are a part of your Enterprise and Frontline licenses and are included in that experience right now at no extra cost. And those applications are Viva Connections, first and foremost up at the top. Viva Connections, bringing in your SharePoint Online Intranet into the Microsoft Teams experience, both on desktop and on mobile, just helping people stay connected to the key information, tools, and news that they need. We've got Viva Engage as well, formerly known as Yammer. This is really your business social platform for community and culture building. We've got Viva Insights as well. Insights is there to really give you a look into how you are working as an individual with the seated functionality and helping you examine how you can better utilize your time and make your work more efficient, all while staying generally more balanced in the digital employee experience. And lastly, we've got Viva Learning here. And with Viva Learning, everyone, even in the seated basic elements of Viva, has access to over 150 different courses in LinkedIn Learning and from Microsoft to help folks upskill and share that knowledge with their teams more broadly. So even without paying extra cost at this time, you have access to all of these great apps in Viva and in Microsoft Teams. And there really is so much value to be gotten from these different applications. And so at this time, I figure it's better to actually take a look at it in action. So at this time, I'd love to invite my colleagues, Caitlin and Isaac, up to the stage here with me to go through a day in the life with Viva. Thanks so much for joining me. So Caitlin and Isaac are going to be playing the roles of, for Caitlin, Brandy Carlson, a retail associate at a storefront location, and Isaac will be playing the role of Elton David, a product manager at a corporate office. And both of my colleagues here are playing personas that work at a company called Aperture, a company that we have made up for the exact purpose of this demo. And Aperture is playing the role really of a global retail, multifaceted organization here today. So without further ado, I'd love to toss it over to the persona of Brandy Carlson, represented by my colleague, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Annie. Yes. My name is Caitlin, but for the purposes of this demo, I will be playing Brandy. I'm a frontline worker in one of Aperture's retail locations based out of Seattle. Now, I need to access things on my phone because, right, I'm a retail worker, I'm on the go, I'm working on my feet. So everything needs to be readily available in my mobile device. Aperture uses Teams for both corporate and retail workers, and because of Viva's integration into Teams, that means that I can access all of those important tools and resources right on my phone. So first things first, I arrive at work, but before I get started, I need to clock in. So I can open my phone and open the Teams app right from my phone, which is going to take me to the Viva Connections dashboard. Now, in the mobile experience of Viva Connections, you are taken straight to the dashboard, which has all of those critical actions and tools that you need right front and center. So in these cards, I have a few different actions I can take, and I can see from my shifts that I can clock in. So all I've got to do is clock in to start my shift. I can also see the details button in case there's any more information about my shift, like if my supervisor has left me any notes, I can swap the shift for later. I can look and see if maybe I'm working with anyone. I'm flying solo today, so it's going to be a pretty busy day. Right, but I know it's going to be a great day because it's payday. And what's the first thing we do on payday? We check out our pay stubs. So I can go straight into this dashboard and I can see my pay stub right there. It's going to show me on the card the pay period, so I know, but all I have to do is click into view last pay slip, and it's going to bring me into this high-level breakdown of my pay, which means that I'm not going out into another app. I'm not going into my browser for my desktop computer back at home and eventually forgetting that I need to go do that. It's right here available for me. But I've checked my pay stub, and now it's time to start my day. The Aperture team likes to use our team to do tasks. So my supervisor goes into our team, assigns tasks for all of our workers, and then I can access those assigned tasks again from this dashboard. I see that I have a few assigned tasks to me, so all I have to do, again, click right into that card, and I'll see this list. Right, so I have to update the phone display. I've got some inventory, some sales. That sounds boring, and it's due tomorrow, so that's a tomorrow job. But I really like updating phone displays. So I can look into any more of this information simply by clicking on the task itself. Now, when I click on the task itself, it is going to show me a little bit more information. Sometimes my supervisor might put an attachment, might put something else in there. All I want to do, though, today is just mark that I've got it in progress so that he knows I've started it. Right, so it's marked in progress. I get about my day, and now it's time for lunch. And what do I like to do over lunch? I like to check up on important organizational news, like everyone. So I go into Teams, and instead of going back into this dashboard, I can hop right over to the feed, which is going to be that collection of corporate communications news. It's going to bring together some Viva Engage posts, and all I've got to do is scroll through to see sort of each individual post, which is really easy. I can also click new posts just in case maybe since the last time I've logged in that there's something new for me to see, making sure that I haven't missed anything. But actually seeing some Viva Engaged posts sparks an idea that I want to take a photo of the display that I made earlier today. It's super cool. I want to put it in a community. So all I've got to do is navigate to Viva Engage right at the bottom of my Teams rail, and I'm going to be taken into that home feed, which is super similar to Connections. It's just going to bring me sort of aggregated posts from across the communities I'm in. But I want to go to a specific community called Mobile Connect, which brings together retail workers from across the country, as well as some of those retail-facing corporate employees. And I can get to my communities by clicking the little 3 people icon up top. That's going to take me to these tiles, and I can click right into Mobile Connect, right in the center there, and that will take me straight into the community that I'm a part of. I can, again, scroll through and see the posts, but today I just want to start a new discussion, and I can click Share Thoughts, Ideas, or Updates. I'll stick with the discussion today. I can change it to something like a question if I need it answered, or a poll, which I've done in the past, sort of different ways to interact with colleagues. But today I just want to talk about how great I am. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the display I made. But I also want to tag a colleague who works at the corporate headquarters, comes up with amazing ideas for all of us. So I want him to know I was inspired by him. And then he'll get a notification that he was tagged. I'll go in, I'll upload a photo of this, and then I'm going to go ahead and post it. And what's great is now my colleagues can interact with it. And then when they get on their phone and they look through their feeds on Connections and Engage, this is going to pop up in the same way that their posts popped up for me. Right, but lunchtime is over. It's time to get back into the swing of the day. But what I get to do every afternoon, because I'm working toward a promotion to assistant store manager, is do a bit of professional development. And that is powered by Viva Learning. So all I've got to do to get to Viva Learning is, you've guessed it, I'm going to pull up Teams on my phone, and I'm going to go straight into that dashboard. And I can see that I've got a card on there that takes me straight into the Viva Learning module right from this one app. And I can go to my Learning right at the top tab, and that's going to take me to bookmark courses. Now, okay, I see I've got Communicating with Charisma today. It's only 22 minutes long. If I had a little bit more time this afternoon, maybe I could go back to my store's team, where my supervisor will sometimes send links to certain courses that are really nice, or if it's really important for everyone, he'll make it a tab at the top of the channel, so it's super easy for me to bookmark later. But as we all know, I'm working by myself today. I'm busy, so I'm going to finish up this course. I'm going to maybe check out some other bookmark courses later. I'm going to head about my day. And then this afternoon, I had a bit of a challenge, super complicated customer complaint, and because I was by myself, I had to reach out to my supervisor, and he dropped everything. He was super helpful. The customer was so happy, and I want to give him a shout out to know I appreciated it. So I can scroll on down, and I see that I've got this praise option, which is powered by Viva Insights. So all I've got to do is click this Send Praise button, and it's going to take me to the easiest user interface ever. All I've got to do is search for his name, And then I can look and sort of change the card how I need it to. I'm going to pick a title that resonates, so I want to make sure I'm saying thank you. I'm going to add a personal note to him to explain specifically why I'm shooting him this praise. And then I can adjust some other features in here, like if I look at the background colors, his favorite color is green, so I'm going to pick something green for him. And then I'm going to preview it, no typos, and I'm going to send it, and it's going to go straight to his Teams chat, which is great because he's going to get that notification on his computer. He's going to get this card that says he's been praised. And I know that for me, whenever I receive praise from colleagues, it's like the best part of my day. I feel really connected to people, so I like to pay it forward. But it has been a long day, full of stuff today. I'm ready to go home, but first I need to clock out. So I'm hopping back into Teams, and now I can see clock out as an option on my shifts. I've clocked out, and that's the end of my day. And that was just a little sort of preview of what's possible for me as a frontline worker through Teams. You know, because all of those Viva modules are brought into the mobile experience, I can really get access to all of that. And so not only am I working for Aperture, I can grow professionally, and most importantly, I can feel like I'm part of Aperture as a whole. But that was me for the front line. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague who's going to talk about how you do it in the corporate office. Take it away.
Thank you, Caitlin. So now let's take a look at what Viva looks like when you are, sadly or not, desktop bound at your desk. And to do that, we'll dive in to Elton's experience, our product manager based in Chicago. And so let's say Elton gets into work around 9 a.m. And when he does, he fires up Teams, and the first thing that comes up is Viva Connections. This is where he likes to start his day, and we'll get there in just a moment. But before, Elton knows that today, sadly, there are a lot of meetings. And as with Brandy before, busyness is going to be a running theme through this. So he wants to make sure he's setting aside enough time to be productive in his work. And to do that, he hops over into Viva Insights. When he opens up Viva Insights, he's taken to this home screen, kind of his action dashboard for well-being and productivity that pulls in all of this information from different parts of your working experience, or different parts to help you manage your working experience. And we see those in the tabs on the left with well-being, productivity, and teamwork. To book time, he hops over into the well-being tab and scrolls down to this section, Act with Intention. And Viva Insights has pulled different availabilities from his calendar that he can book all from right here, so that when anyone tries, and they will try, to schedule a meeting over it, they'll see that he's busy. We'll go ahead and book for that 9:30 slot. And we'll click out of this for now. The other thing he wants to do while he's here is to set quiet time. Because it's been so busy at Aperture, and because Elton has Teams on his phone, which is great, he's getting mobile notifications all of the time, including after hours. He doesn't like it, and more importantly, his spouse doesn't like it either. So he's going to set time when he goes on automatically do not disturb, really creating firmer boundaries between work. To do that, he goes up to this quiet time action card that Viva Insights is showing him, and he hits set quiet time. When he does, he's brought into this screen where he can pick which days he'd like to set quiet time for. We'll do Monday through Friday, and then what times he wants that do not disturb setting to be flicked on. So he's going to set it for 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. You'll also see that he can mute those notifications for the entire day, which he'll do for Sunday and Saturday. When he's done, he'll select Save Changes, and then he's good to go. Before we get back to Viva Connections and some of his daily work, there's one more thing that Elton wants to do in Viva Insights to really help make sure he's setting up his day well. He wants to make sure he didn't miss anything from yesterday. To do that, he'll scroll down in the Productivity tab to the section Suggested Tasks. Now, Suggested Tasks looks at his frequent collaborators and looks at emails or meeting invites from them and sees whether or not he's missed anything, whether it's an ask in an email or a meeting invite. We see, for example, that Elton hasn't responded yet to a meeting invite from one of his colleagues, Dave. Viva Insights shows that to him, and Elton can RSVP to the meeting from here. Now that he feels like he's getting off on the right foot for his day, he hops back into Viva Connections And this is the same app that Brandy spent so much time in earlier on their phone. But you'll notice that the experience on the desktop is a little bit different. So with Viva Connections, you can see that it really is pulling in the front page of your SharePoint intranet into Teams, making all of those resources accessible. But even though it looks a little different, the same features that Brandy was showing off before are available in the desktop experience. So you can see we have those dashboard cards, and then we also have the Viva feed. We'll scroll up to the dashboard cards, and you'll notice that there are a few different ones than what we saw with Brandy. So for example, Elton doesn't have shifts, and he does have this ServiceNow ticket. With Viva the Connections dashboard, you're able to audience target those cards to make sure that the right tools are being surfaced to the right employee populations. So for example, Elton needed to submit a ticket for his desktop via ServiceNow yesterday. He could do that by hopping into the ServiceNow website, putting in his logon, his credentials, getting in, doing all of that, but he also has the option just to do it from Teams where he already is. He can even check on the status of that ticket, and we see it's still pending review. Now, if we scroll down to the Viva feed, it'll have that same content we saw with Brandy, but targeted specifically to Elton based on his activity, whether it's a community or a SharePoint site that he's part of. Now, speaking of communities and Viva Engage, let's say it's now 11 or 12, and Elton, like Brandy, likes to spend a little bit of time in Viva Engage to see what's happening. He clicks into it and is taken to his home feed, which is pulling in posts from the different communities that he's a part of, as well as the different posts that individuals are putting on their storylines. He scrolls down and he actually sees Brandy's post from earlier today. That's because he's part of the Mobile Connect community. As a product manager, he really likes to see how products are being displayed, getting that 360 view on the work they're doing. He's really impressed with what Brandy put together here, so he likes the post and then asks whether or not Brandy thinks that this can be generalized to more of their displays in more stores. We'll wait for and pay attention to Viva Engage to see when she responds. But now we see that Viva Engage is not only a great tool for staying connected with different communities, finding your perfect cat community and following all those pictures, but also sharing different work ideas and accelerating innovation in your workplace. Now, we're going to hop into Viva Learning for a moment while I talk about a meeting that Elton has tomorrow with one of his direct reports. So tomorrow he has a one-on-one with Isaiah, who we actually saw Bill set up a meeting with earlier in the Converge app. And recently, Isaiah's been really interested in professional development and taking on more responsibility at work. Part of that is learning how to be a leader and to manage other employees. Now, while Elton was browsing Viva Learning the other day, he saw a course that he thought Isaiah would be really interested in. And he bookmarked it, so it would show up in his Mind Learning tab, making it easy to access. And it's this one around inclusive leadership. Now, Elton wants to share that with Isaiah, so Isaiah has a chance to review that before their one-on-one tomorrow, though. To do that, he hops into he hops into Teams chat, and then he can actually send the module directly in chat. To do that, he goes down to the Viva Learning icon at the bottom of the screen. He searches for that module. And he's able to add it into the chat and leave a message for Isaiah to read when he gets to it. Now, when he sends the chat, or when Isaiah receives the chat, Isaiah will just be able to click the chat message and he'll be taken to Viva Learning to look at that course. Now, it's been a long and productive, and as we said, busy day. But let's say it's now 4 or 5 p.m. Elton is getting ready to sign off. To do that, he's going to use a virtual commute by Viva Insights. So every day at 5 p.m., Elton gets a notification from Viva Insights, which we can see, that asks him if he's ready to wrap up his day and take him on the virtual commute. This lets him finish or take stock of any remaining tasks, and then also takes him through a mindfulness exercise to help create that distance. So let's take a look at what that looks like. He begins the commute. He's able to see upcoming meetings for tomorrow, any outstanding tasks that happen today. He can even add a new one. And then we're taken to that wind down where he can select from a series of different mindfulness exercises to help him create that distance. And now I'll hand it back over to Annie, who'll close us out with Viva.
All right, thank you so much, Caitlin and Isaac, for helping us see really the real life value that Microsoft Viva can bring, both for employees on the front line and also in corporate offices. All right, so we're gonna hop back into it now, and I will just take a moment to say that if you have any questions that have come up either about the collaborative apps that we talked about or about Microsoft Viva, don't forget to put them in the chat and we will address them as part of our Q&A and panel experience at the end of today's session. All right. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker segment here for today. We have Chewy Chong from Microsoft joining us for today's session to give us some tidbits on how he sees transformation and Viva really playing a role in any organization. So Chewy is a program manager with the partner incubation team for Viva Engineering, and he's going to go ahead and get us started today. So welcome, Chewy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I apologize for the lighting. I don't think Microsoft paid their bills, so I have to stick with this crazy little lamp in this office. I can't get the stuff to work, so this technical difficulty we'll all deal with here. All right, so I would love to walk you through a thing that we've been spending some time thinking about. You've all heard about Viva, and Microsoft is presenting Viva kind of as a main dish. You go here, and Viva is your platform for employee experience. But as I work with certain types of customers, especially customers who use Viva deeply, you start to realize that Viva might not necessarily be the main dish, but a supporting dish to a couple of things. So I would love to walk you through some of the things that we've been thinking about, and I would love to get your input. And if any of you guys are working in this space about using Viva as a side dish, Marcus and I will love to make a connection with you, hear more about your stories, and kind of see some of the challenges you guys are going through using Viva as a side dish. So a little bit about myself, Chewy Chong. I have been at Microsoft for like 15-something years, 16-something years. Took a break in the middle, so I'm old. I used to work up in Chicago. I think I was in Chicago, right? My very first project was up in Northbrook, Illinois. One of Microsoft's very first .NET projects was with a financial firm up there. So I love Chicago. I hope you guys are in Chicago. Otherwise, I'm screwing this up here. The thing that I've been working on today is something called partner incubation. All I do is I work with top-notch firms like our folks from Valorem to kind of think through what are some of the advanced things that we can do with our tech. And we use those types of insights to help us, well, make better products. You know, I don't want to hear about all the great things that's being done. I want to hear about all the things and gaps that we're missing. So like it's kind of a interesting work to work with advanced partners to try to figure out how can we use the technology in alternative ways or more impactful ways. I do a lot of this feedback work for our engineering partners. I literally work on the first floor of the building where Insights is sitting. I believe the engaged people are over there somewhere. It's a big open space, and we're all moving everybody in as part of this consolidation of this return to work thing here. All right, so let me show you the agenda for today. I'm just going to walk through just some few things about like what Viva is being used for today. What's the main dish kind of approach to how Viva is being used. Then I want to talk to you about how I believe Viva is more of a side dish to support any type of transformations occurring with your company. And I'll walk you through an example. And at the very end, I'm share with you my contact details, and you folks can see Marcus there, probably sitting in front row. Just ping him, grab him to give me or him feedback if you are planning to use Viva as a side dish, okay? All right, so let's recap kind of like how Viva is used today. What is the main dish of Viva? You've seen this slide before. I'll just go through very quickly. If you're trying to get employees to connect, right, we've got this connection set of modules of technology that can help you do things. If you want to understand what's going on with your employees, how they're engaging, how they are collaborating, feedback about how your work is progressing, you use the Insight set of tools. If you want to go through and set goals, if you want to go through and just do quick pulse checks, you do the growth suite of tools we've got. And if you want to understand purpose, you want to find people, you want to learn things, then you've got the purpose set of tools. So that's the main dish. But if we step back and we think for a second, what are we here to do? We don't wake up wanting to go do technology. Well, the nerds here at Microsoft probably do wake up wanting to do technology, but everybody else that's normal wake up because they want to accomplish something. There's a business outcome, a cultural outcome, a customer outcome you want to get done. And technology just simply plays a role in supporting that. So if you think about it from a transformation perspective, a change perspective, the McKinsey data that I have shown here, this was a couple years ago. It's actually pretty fascinating. It's about how like 70% of all large-scale transformation fails. And McKinsey actually breaks it down to like what they believe are the key things that's causing these type of failures. So if you look at the first part right there, like about how like the CEO doesn't actually set the right expectations, or the CEO doesn't communicate this out well, or set out a really good type of narrative, that falls underneath purpose and connection. These are tools that can be used to help the leadership team crystallize what the outcomes are and provide that outcome and accountability kind of agreement out to all of us to know what we're trying to work towards. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you see more about how like, hey, people don't have the skill set, or there's not enough resources, or it's just not happening. You know, we don't see that collaboration occurring. That falls under growth and insight. These are obvious things when you and I are standing on the outside looking at transformation, but when you're inside the company and you're trying to figure out how to go through and make things work, well, that becomes hard. So how can Viva be used to support these large-scale transformation that your company is going through? So as I go to my next slide, what are some of the big transformation that I'm hearing? Again, remember, this is my perspective, not a Microsoft official position, right? But what are some of the big things that we're seeing right now where people are using Viva to kind of help with transformation? One thing I hear a lot about is like clinician well-being. These frontline workers are very important to kind of how all this works, or to how the economy works. So there's a lot of people thinking about clinician well-being. This is another very funny thing. I hear a lot of people give me feedback about, hey, you know what? My staff thinks they're in meetings all the time. Oh crap, I'm in meetings all the time too. Every 5 minutes I got somewhere, it's either eating lunch or raising a PO. That's all I do, right? So that culture about where everyone's in meetings, there's this fear of missing out. If I'm on this meeting, something might be assigned to me, or someone might ask a question. I'm not there to actually provide perspective. How do we go through and address those type of issues? Because it really hurts productivity, right? Other things we hear a lot about that ties into kind of well-being is around like career mobility. I want to go through and ensure that my career progresses. I want to make sure I have growth. You know, I want to feel that I am actually contributing to business, so there's a future for me here. The well-being part and retention piece play a role in all that stuff, right? Because people keep thinking it's all about pay, but it's not. It's really about feeling that I am making progress, I'm making an impact. And then sometimes you just have to call it out. It's like, hey, look, what do you want to get accomplished? How do I get you to stay here? How to make you be happy? How do we create that conversation with people to understand what the needs are so the company can do things about it without you churning out or having to pay everybody much more money, but not address some of the systemic issues, right? These are the things I've been hearing a lot from customers. And what's great is that the Viva suite of tools, again, I'm not trying to fixate on the technology piece, right? Even though I do work at a tech company. But the key thing here is you care about that, and the technology is there to support these transitions, to help you navigate, get information, to create that feedback loop where action and reaction can be observed. So I want to give more details about the M&A space. It turns out M&A is pretty hot. Well, at least a year ago it was pretty hot since I was spending a lot of time working on this. I'm going to walk you through a example M&A thing that we did with a customer. And again, I didn't lead this conversation. One of our partners did do this work, and I would love to kind of see how this resonates with you folks. And if you guys are doing something similar in a different space, let me know. All right, so I am going to my next slide. Mergers and acquisitions are complicated, and mergers and acquisitions can either be a good thing, but most of the time it's not necessarily a great thing. So this chart basically shows that, hey, whether or not you're doing a big merger and acquisition like a company and another company getting together, or it might just be my team being integrated with another team. The reality is some acquisitions and mergers actually go great, and then people are collaborating and healthy and efficient very, very quickly. But there's also collaborations and integration, mergers and acquisitions where it doesn't go well. Things do not connect well. You bring people in and they're just sitting there by themselves. So that particular chart just shows you there's a huge spectrum of it. There's no guarantees. All right, so next slide. This is kind of what we were toying with. We've kind of been thinking it through. The first thing about any type of merger and acquisition is clarity. Why did this occur? Whether or not you're acquiring a company or whether or not you're joining forces with a peer team, sister team, brother team, whatever, what is the outcome? Why are we doing this? Clearly calling that out and then articulating to the people so they understand why this has occurred is a very important first step. And then who's accountable? Right? Like right now, I'm going through change in a sense that we have all our staff coming into one place in the Microsoft kind of headquarters down in Redmond. It's a time where people aren't certain what this new open office or everybody return to work culture is like. Well, who's responsible for culture? Who's responsible for having that conversation? Where's that safe space to have that conversation? So agreeing about what the outcome is, who's accountable, communicating out and allowing people to communicate is that first row that I called out right there. Things like goals, engage, amplify, and connection can all help out with that particular first step of this engagement. All right, the second two pieces of that particular slide is a bit of a loop. I am a big experimentation nerd. I love to do something and I want to see what the hell happened so I can go back and tweak what I did. So that loop needs to be established. First thing we do is where the hell are we at? Are people connected today? Do people understand what the objectives are? How do they feel? Insights, pulse, those are all great ways to go through and get that data. So great, we now have a baseline. Now that we're going to start that merger and acquisition process or whatever, right? Partnering up with a peer team, it doesn't matter. Now let's think about things we can do to try to improve that. Maybe we can do more lunches. Maybe we can create a new team space where people can collaborate. Maybe we get them all to sit physically together now in this building. Whatever it might be. Go through, you do these interventions, and Viva, again, provides you a bunch of tools to help support those type of interventions, whether that's connections, learning, it's engaged topics. That are all things you can do to try to make that combination of two groups better. Great, I did that work. Well, did it make any improvements? We loop back up to that second line, which is where we're at. We'll get insight, we'll get pulse, and we just keep doing that and just keep looping and looping and looping. And then hopefully by learning and tweaking and learning and tweaking, you start going in a great direction where you have the teams working together. All right, you guys can see I wear glasses, I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm gonna show you some nerdy stuff here. Viva Insights does all kinds of cool stuff. So if you're not a O&A nut, organization network analysis nut, I mean, don't worry about this. Get the folks from Valorem, grab me, grab Viva Insights. There's some really interesting off-label uses of our technology that can help your organization better understand and visualize how your teams are collaborating. I really wish I can show you the Microsoft internal one. I saw what our little dot and line chart looked like for our organization. And what's really interesting is you see all these dots, and you see this dingleberry kind of hanging off. Okay, I shouldn't say dingleberry. We see this group of people kind of hanging off here on the side, right? And it's like, what the hell is that crew? So we were all guessing. Could that be HR? Could that be a corporate headquarters, like the legal team? Like, who do we not talk to every single day? And when we actually went deeper to look at that little cluster of people, we realized it's actually LinkedIn. Right, so, Microsoft, LinkedIn, we joined forces. But the two groups are not collaborating, but maybe that's okay. Well, first of all, no one ever told me what the reason was behind us grouping together. I mean, I know it's kind of obvious, but like, is that okay? These two groups being separate little orbs, right? There's some interaction, but not a lot. I don't know. But the key point is your leadership team, the people who actually fostered that connection, they should see that that's occurring. And then they can decide whether or not additional interventions need to occur. Insights provides you really great ways to visualize this, to see how people are acting. You can even get deeper into specific groups or roles, which I'm going to go to my next slide here. You can even break it down by specific groups, like the PM team, or the leadership team, or the designer team, the engineering team, like which teams are doing well, which teams are not doing well. If the data is there, then you might be able to use some of that data as a way to gauge whether or not the merger and acquisition is going well, or the joining of forces are going well. These are all examples. Again, I can talk forever on this. I only got 30 seconds left, but I just wanted you guys to know that there's a lot of really interesting things you can use where Viva isn't necessarily the main dish, but a side dish to support whatever type of transformation your organization is going through. Okay. With that, my details are here on the slide. I'm the only Chewy in the company. It's actually pretty easy to find me, right? And don't mix me up with Chewy.com. That's typically a mistake, right? Which is a dog toys company. And grab me or grab Marcus, and we are more than happy to talk more. And I want to hear about your stories. If you're doing this stuff, tell me what's going on. Hey, tell me what doesn't work. I want to make our products better. So with that, I hand it back to Marcus, I believe, right?
Thank you, Joey. Really good stuff. Yeah, and I think one of the things as we're kind of wrapping up Viva, moving into our next segment, there's a lot of connections, right? We heard Chewy talk a lot about data, right? And there's a ton of data under M365. Bill talked about the graph. Well, what is one of the best ways to really realize the value of that data? And what is one of the things that everybody's talking about right now? Generative AI, right? And these are some of the biggest announcements that Microsoft made. And with that, I want to turn it over to Will to talk a little bit about Copilot and some of this exciting news.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus. Hey, everyone. I'm Will. I work out of the Chicago Valorem office alongside the lovely folks who spoke before me today. And today, as you know, Marcus set me up great. I'm going to be talking about Microsoft Copilot. So, of course, today's event, Fall in Love, Do More with Less. I think it would be a huge miss if we didn't talk about AI and all the things that we could do with it. So instead of talking about it or trying to tell you what it is, I'm just going to play this quick little video from Microsoft so that you guys can get a better understanding of what it might be. Cool. So yeah, that was a quick little video about Copilot. If you haven't heard of it yet, now you have. Again, really just being able to do a lot with it. As you saw in the video, you can draft a lot of content in Word. You can have it even give you draft for slides in PowerPoint. You can have it do a bit of data analysis in Excel. So some really cool stuff that you can do with this. And again, being able to have a virtual assistant like Copilot do all of these sort of more tedious tasks that take up a lot of time in your day. Now you're more free to do things that are more meaningful work and definitely provide more impact. So just want to dive a little bit into sort of what happens behind the scenes when we use Copilot. So Copilot, again, being that it's AI, If you've ever heard the term "you get out what you put in," it really applies to Copilot. So as you saw in the video, the only way to interact with it is to give it prompts. Tell it to do things like, hey, start a draft document for me, or set up a meeting with someone else. I think what it'll do when you give it a prompt like that, first it'll go and fetch any relevant details. So for example, if I wanted to invite a colleague to a meeting, I want to invite Danny to a meeting, then it would go to my Outlook calendar, it would go to Danny's Outlook calendar, it would grab both of our schedules and try to find a time slot that would fit for both of us. Again, that's just a really simple example, but basically that's what would happen in behind the scenes. First, it would fetch those details, and then it would have a sort of itemized list of steps that it would take. And when we talk about the prompts that we give it, there's a key term within AI called grounding, and that's specifically for improving the prompt quality. So again, you get out what you put in. If you give it sort of an ambiguous prompt, or you don't really make it clear what you're trying to do to Copilot, then you're not going to get much value out of it. So grounding is really important here to make sure that your prompt quality is exactly what you're asking for and not something else. And so this happens initially, first rounds with Graph APIs and Microsoft 365 apps. Once it has a better idea of what you're trying to do, it'll then process it through the large language model. And that's where sort of the beauty happens between with Copilot. That's where sort of the magic happens. And then finally, once it goes through a few more rounds of grounding and really just goes through some final security compliance checks, then it'll finally action out what I wanted to do. So that's when it'll go back to the Microsoft 365 apps and finally execute my command, which is generating a draft in Word doc or setting up that meeting that I wanted to set up. Next, want to talk about Power Platform and Copilot and what's going to happen next. So we have another quick video here.
Power Platform, you can use natural language to bring ideas to life in a new design experience. With Copilot and Power Apps, describe your app in a few simple words, and next generation AI will create your app and help you refine and update it. With Copilot and Power Automate, building flows to automate your world has never been easier. You can start by describing your process in a few simple sentences, and Power Automate will build your flow. With Copilot and Power Virtual Agents, building a complex chatbot to answer and manage internal and external conversations has never been simpler. And with the AI Builder, you have access to the Azure OpenAI model in a low-code experience to configure and embed next-generation AI to generate, summarize, classify, translate text, and more in your apps and flows in a few clicks. The future of low-code starts today. Imagine it, describe it, Power Platform builds it.
So yeah, that was just another cool little video about Copilot and what it'll bring along with or how it'll affect Power Platform. You heard a little bit earlier today from Marcus talking about Power Platform. Essentially, it's a low-code, no-code solution or platform that Microsoft is pushing out. It's something that developers of all skill levels can utilize and really make really cool solutions with. So again, when we're talking about AI, Power Platform, which is already a low-code, no-code solution, I think Copilot is going to empower first-time makers or those, I guess, who aren't terribly familiar with Power Platform, be able to even drive more value out of it. So definitely a huge potential to be a game changer in that space. Review and quality control, definitely when we're talking about AI, this new technology, it's not perfect. So I think as humans, we need to be the ones that are doing the quality control and making sure that the AI is not doing something that we don't want it to. Or even if it does mistakes, we need to catch those and make sure that we're on top of quality control. So prompt quality, I've already talked about that, super important. AI has already been a thing in Power Platform for 2 years. So you currently, it's always been a thing that you can sort of use natural language or give it prompts to write Power effects. So that little segment, bits of code, queries, basically just building blocks. Now that Copilot is coming out and it's built on GPT-4, you can actually use natural language to write entire applications with the front end built out, the database, and even the logic that writes data back to the database as well. So the key message here being that, Power Platform, it is a really great tool. Copilot, it's still not generally available yet. All we know so far is that Microsoft is testing it with about 20 clients, and in the coming few months, we'll know a little bit more about the pricing and when it'll be available. So again, being able to get familiar with Power Platform before Copilot is released, so that when Copilot launches, we can really just drive the maximum value from the products. So again, talking more about how to prepare for the release of Copilot. The human aspect of change should always be well managed. I think there's two different sides on the spectrum. There's people who don't really care for AI, don't really know what it's going to be used for, don't think it's going to have much of an impact. And then there are those who are really excited for it, really excited to use the tool to be able to do more with less. So as I mentioned, most likely will not be available for the next couple of months. Especially in the tech industry, we've seen a huge increase in excitement and just general increase in ChatGPT and AI. So again, Microsoft releasing Copilot at this time is just, it's indicative of how disruptive AI is going to be in the market. So again, lastly, needing to fact check when using AI. Again, it can be a huge time-saving tool, but if we just let it run wild and we're not really doing much quality control, then it might be even detrimental. Copilot for Viva. We've heard a lot about Viva today, so just again wanted to put a quick slide here to, I guess, highlight sort of what would be offered along with the Viva suite. So when we talk about Engage, Copilot, what it can do, you can feed Copilot prompts, so it creates draft posts for you that you would post in Engage. It can offer suggestions to personalize messages and responses. You can even analyze engagement metrics on your posts and different posts. In the learning module, it suggests curated learning collections tailored to specific roles. So someone who's a product manager might receive a different line of learning than someone who's a retail store associate. Goals, so suggesting draft OKR recommendations based on existing documents, and then also consolidating existing data to generate more comprehensive check-ins. If you're not familiar with goals, it's a tool that you can use to sort of set goals, and I think the Viva suite is just tied in really well, or Copilot ties in really well with goals. Then we have topics. Again, something we can do with Copilot is using natural language to learn more about topics and seeing related events. And then finally, Glant. If you haven't heard of Glant, it's LinkedIn's product. I think Microsoft has recently acquired it, but it's a tool that sort of a lot of companies can use to sort of capture feedback about their organization and conduct exit surveys and et cetera. So and with Copilot and Glant, we can summarize and analyze thousands of employee comments, and then also use natural language to explore feedback and ask questions. So that's it for me. I think I just wanted to, again, give a quick update on Copilot, what's to come. And with that being said, I'll hand it back over to Marcus.
All right, thank you, Will.
Yeah, so really, really good stuff. It's pretty exciting as we watch, go back, a little over 5 years ago, Teams came on the scene, right? It seemed pretty groundbreaking at the time. Everything in one place, it becomes a hub for everything we do. Power Platform, same thing. We're seeing all the growth. Okay, now it's even better. You put all that stuff inside of Teams where people already are, right? Now we're starting to hear about, Chat GPT in search, right? And it's really cool. It's got all a buzz. Now with this news, just even more recent with Microsoft, you can really see the evolution of AI and what it's going to do to the industry and how it's going to change all of our jobs, all of our lives as it's integrated into the flow of work. Really, really cool stuff. And so with that, like to invite in the room up some panelists, Bill, Annie, and Pete, come on up, and we will have Chewy, who you've already met, and Rochelle joining virtually. So, and I thought it would be fun, and I'm going to go ahead and grab a seat myself. Thought it might be fun if we have everyone intro themselves with answer a quick question. And so we'll start with you, Pete. Maybe introduce yourself and tell us, what is your favorite Viva module?
Okay, Pete Zoki. I'm the Director of IT Operations and Modern Workplace at CF Industries. I have three favorites for different reasons, so sorry. Viva Connections, because it's free. Viva Learning, because how we use it, it's free. And then Viva Insights really helps me. I'm neuroatypical, so it helps me keep track of things, and I really like that. And it's free.
Great. So you probably enjoyed the demo today, right? So we'll have some more questions for you. Bill, you want to introduce yourself and tell us what your favorite your module is?
So Bill Felker, again, team member here for the Collaborative Apps team with Valorem Apply. And my favorite app is Viva Topics. And the reason why is because it helps me find things that are relevant to when I'm doing searches. And it also just helps me organize content too for other people who might be searching for stuff.
And Chewy, live from the Not So Sunny Seattle. Introduce yourself again quickly, and for those that might have missed your amazing presentation, and tell us what your favorite Viva module is.
It's kind of hard since they're all my babies, I can't really pick a favorite here, right? Viva Insights all the way, baby, man. It's the off-label uses of it to go through and get insights, understand how things are working, see the action or reaction. That's all interesting. But I just got a preview from the Viva Pulse team, and that's pretty. Can I talk about that? Yeah, stuff there. Please have it.
Thank you, Chewy. And Rochelle, please introduce yourself and tell us about your favorite Viva module.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I didn't go. I apologize. I am a director of internal digital communications, and my favorite module, I'm tweeting a little bit because it's forthcoming, but I'm super excited about as an internal communication.
We all are. And last but not least, our amazing Annie, please tell us what your favorite Viva module is. I think you already introduced yourself, but
yeah. Just in case, happy to see everyone again. My name's Annie Lee. I'm on our adoption change management team, and my favorite Viva module is Viva Engage, because I like to get engaged and I love to connect on things personally and professionally with my colleagues. Yeah, it's where I like to be. So engage all the way for me.
Awesome. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask some folks some specific questions and put them on the spot and see how they do. So let's go to Bill. Bill, we all love Power Platform, and we've heard today about how powerful it is, how much even more powerful it is when you use it inside of Teams as a collaborative app. But what do you do for companies that are concerned with sprawl, with governance? What would be your recommendation?
So there's a couple of things you have to address when you're talking about these, Power Apps, and one of them is adoption and change management. So making sure that you have a plan for how you're going to adopt them. So it's not just throw it out to the world, plan with some adoption. And the other thing is governance. So you got to make sure you plan for that governance too. And so we like to recommend the Microsoft COE Starter Kit to help you plan and govern your Power Platform as they're moving forward. But then also making sure that people know what they're building and how they're building it. Again, whether it's through adoption or whether it's making sure you're keeping track of what they're building so that you can then go back and work with the end users who are building these tools.
Great, thank you, Bill. And with that same question, I think Pete, I was having a great conversation with you earlier. At CF Industries, it sounds like you've had that same challenge. Like, what have you done to really thinking about Teams and really Power Platform governance specifically? Yeah,
so we have a fear of the Power Platform, Power Apps, and Power Automate specifically turning into just the 2023, 24, 25 version of Microsoft Access. So if you've been around in IT, people would have their kids come in, do a summer internship. They'd create this incredible Microsoft Access database. No one would know about it. 7 years later, somebody'd say, hey, we run the entire shipping department on this Microsoft Access database, and it doesn't work anymore. So we started with the COE, the Center of Excellence with Microsoft helped us set that up. So now we get to see in there who is using Power Apps or Power Automate, who's creating. Really helps us to see what areas people want to get into, because we have a great governance council and in each individual area, but sometimes people skip the line and they just go and create things. We have engineers and engineers love to create things. And so they've created some things. We're able to see that. We're also able, when we hire WM Reply, now Valorem. No? Okay, I'll say that.
We answer to both. So.
Sorry. So when we develop an app in conjunction with our partner, we'll know what the adoption is, and we'll finally have an idea of, are people using what we just spent this money on? And I think that's important too. So we feel much better about it because we've got our arms around it. Nobody can create something without us seeing it, and that helps us.
Great. Great answer. And, Andy, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's going to be a tough act to follow. But so, you obviously helped many customers on their Viva journey. What are some of the key challenges that you've seen some of our clients run into as they're planning for and actually trying to deploy and implement Viva?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Marcus. The classic consulting answer of it depends, but essentially, one thing that we see a lot is that kind of having the visible sponsorship and having the leaders really get engaged around Viva is a lot more important than people might think at the beginning. So just as Chewy was mentioning, for any change, you really need to be raising awareness, communicating, talking about the what's in it for me and all of those kinds of key benefits. And if this piece is missed, or if it's coming kind of from the wrong people, sometimes even if it's me sending an email to a customer organization, it doesn't have that right impact. We need that visible sponsorship to be able to say from someone who kind of oversees or is influential within the business, this is what we're going to be pivoting to, this is why it's so important, and here's what you can get out of it, and here's how it's going to drive our business forward. So speaking purely from an adoption change management perspective, I think that the visible and active sponsorship is really important. And then honestly, it varies by Viva module. I think with Viva Connections and working a lot in the internet modernization space recently, I think that when it comes to migrating and sort of getting the people engaged and doing all of that mapping to figure out what's going to go where in our future state and what's going to make our experience better for our employees, that tends to be, again, a very involved step. And I know Rochelle also can speak to that. And then working with kind of each of the stakeholders and making sure they understand the purpose and so that they're able to better help people adopt Viva. Yeah, I think that's it for me. Yeah, really the sponsorship and the visible purpose behind Viva.
Thank you, Andy. And with that, you brought up Rochelle. I think, she talked about some of the things to really think about. Having actually rolled out Viva in your organization, maybe, are people using it? And, and how has it been received in general? We'd love to hear like a little story from the real world.
Yeah, so our organization, yes, is the direct answer, and then I'll elaborate. So Viva Engage, our CEO is on there daily, commenting in all types of threads, not just executive messages or senior leadership. So I would say yes. We've had some cool success stories too. There was, I think it was in January, somebody flagged on Engage that our screensaver, it flashed. And so they were flagging that as an accessibility challenge. And so they flagged that publicly on Yammer, and we were able to react quickly and get that changed. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Yammer, I think page. So that was a really cool success story, but that's where we send most of our communications, and we do have really, really high engagement on Engage. And at our company, we do not automatically add everybody to our company group, our company official group, and so people have to choose to opt in. So we can take quite a bit of pride in the engagement that we have on that channel, which is about 66% of our workforce. We have about 15,000 team members have opted into that channel.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so there you have it. People are using this stuff, and so it's pretty exciting. Peter, though, back to you. I think not all organizations use SharePoint Online, right? And that's kind of one of the first steps, especially with Viva Connections, right? Getting things onto SharePoint, set up in a way that's going to provide that foundation for Viva Connections. Maybe talk a little bit about what that looked like, or what that looks like in your organization, the planning and thoughts that you guys have done.
So we have a huge SharePoint Online footprint. It's really important to us. It's how we get the news out. It's how we in almost every location has their own page and their own site, and really important. And that's what the users are comfortable with. They went from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint Online. They're very comfortable with it, and so we needed to get that into Teams. And Teams is what we're trying to do in my group is we're trying to get Teams as a platform is what I'm calling it. You call it a hub, but we want to make sure that people spend their day in Teams because it's one platform for them to sort of deal with. So when we could bring connections in there, it was a big deal. Now we didn't go with the new way of doing it. So they click on, we've even renamed it to the name of our intranet, but when they click on connections, they see our intranet. We're going to snap out of that in the next couple of months with the help of WM Reply and go to what it looks like on your phone. So you're going to see the news, you're going to see things that are important to the individual, and that's a strange concept in our company. They're very old-fashioned, and that's great because we're wildly successful. So when we bring these things in, we want to do it slowly, and I got a great team, so I know they'll pull it off. I just wind them up and they go. I don't do anything.
Great stuff. Yeah, and so and actually, so Bill, back to you. Another Power Platform question. I guess this is an interesting kind of topic. It's getting a little bit geekier, but I mean, if you are looking at somebody comes to you with a business idea or business challenge, and they're like, I really feel like there's an app. I think it's probably makes sense inside of Teams, but I've heard about this Power Platform thing, this low code, no code thing. Traditionally, I would have started with custom dev. What should I use? Like, how do you, what's the process that you go through when you think about that, low code, no code versus custom build problem?
I'm going to steal Andy's answer and say it depends.
But it really does, because a lot of times you'll look at your first peek of the application and say, well, what do I need to accomplish? And as you're trying to figure out what you need to accomplish, you have to figure out where you're going to connect to, what data services are you going to use on the back end, so that you can make a decision. Will the Power Platform with low code, no code solution work for what I'm trying to do? If it does, that's where you should start. If it won't, because you say there's some restrictions, I need to do some special permissions over here, I need to do some different things over here, then you say, okay, well, now I may need to venture into that custom world, and say, what kind of custom app can I build? And so then you kind of have to work from there. And then you have to decide where you're going to build it. Is it going to be in the SharePoint framework? Or is it going to be out in Azure, where I'm going to deploy it out to Azure and then pull it into Teams? Or is it a website that I already have today, and can I just make that one and pull it inside to Teams, so I don't have to rebuild anything and I can just pull it in?
Do more with less, right? I mean, that's really the key. Yeah. So, and then I think finally, and it seems like our pre-written questions, and we're going to have Danny read out some questions that have come in during the presentation today. But Chewy, love to get your thoughts. So, one challenge that we've seen, right, with Viva Insights is that employees and leadership have trouble really understanding, seeing the value of the tool, right? We hear about it, it sounds great, exciting. How can we help people understand? I think you did a great job with your presentation, but if you just had, a few sentences to really say what should they do to see the value, what would you say?
That's a very good question here. How to explain this? A lot of it really starts with kind of you understanding what exactly it is that you want to know. Right? So just imagine, just step back, ignore all the boundaries of what the technology can do, and just sit down and just draw out, hey, look, I would love if we to look at this, but we need to accomplish that. A lot of these engagements I see, it's people trying to back their way, starting with the technology, and it never seems to go well. So have your team step back and say, I would love to understand what's going on here. I'd love to see how people are collaborating. I'd love to go see if one group versus another group is integrating very well. If you start with that kind of outcome first, then it's easier for you to get the tools to go do the things you want to go do. Otherwise, it's just kind of flipping, flopping, looking at these reports, wondering what you can do with it. And those never end up well. And hey, you might find a situation where we don't give you what you need, right? Then go talk to a partner. Get them to go through to use the off-label kind of capabilities of the technology to help find some of these things out. Or instead of getting hard numbers from the insights, maybe I can get some softer numbers. I'm sure the qualitative people love me calling them soft numbers, right? But I go pulses and glints to get that type of insight without having to do hard numbers too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chewy. And so I think one of the, just to add on to a couple of the topics that were covered here, and where to start, right? Understanding asking the questions, right? If you have somebody from the business that are coming to you saying, this is our problem, understand the questions to ask with the drill, and don't start with the technology, right? Don't be a hammer looking for a nail. Really understand what the problem is trying to solve. And then, if you don't have all the answers, if you don't understand, a partner like Valorem Apply can help you with that, really understand what those right questions are, but then move from there. Hey, let's go test this out, right? And that's another, Power Platform asks Bill kind of a tough question, versus the Power Platform versus custom, but it could be both, right? The end solution might be a complex custom application, but you use low code, no code to get to a POC, test it out with a pilot group, get some learnings, and then figure out how to go build the big thing, right? Same thing with Viva, right? There's some really great promotions going on with pilots, et cetera, for Viva. Don't go necessarily try to boil the ocean. Find a really strong use case will work, like M&A that we talked about, or whatever works for your company. Get the right team together, ask the right questions, and create a POC, a pilot, test it out, and then you have results to kind of take up the chain to go say, hey, we should go do this bigger, or here's some other ideas from our learning. So really, really great stuff, everyone. So with that, I wanted to find out, Danny, do we have any questions that have come in while we've been talking today?
Yep. We've got a lot of questions that came in. So I'm glad everyone's receiving it pretty well. So
you read off the question and I will pick on someone.
Sure. Yeah. So the first question, when looking at rolling out teams for the front line, what security and device management consideration do we need to take on?
Okay. But maybe I'll take that one. And that is it's always a good starting point. So, you can't make the assumption that you've got all that figured out. And so one of the things that if you think about frontline tools, so whether it's a Power Platform tool, some other custom application made within Teams, or Viva, right? Viva connections, and you're, through security trimming, you're focusing different content to your frontline workers or other applications. You need to have a really strong identity environment. So one of the first places to start is an identity assessment. Is Azure AD set up? Do you have your environment, your identity environment in place and prepared to actually do all the cool stuff that you can do? And then from there, you kind of click through. And so the good thing about Viva, the good thing about collaborative apps we talked about, they're already going to inherit all the security that you've already established in your M365 environment. If you're not sure about that, and you don't have the right internal resources, reach out to a partner like us, reach out to your Microsoft contacts and ask the questions, right? And there might be a broader assessment that you need to look at to make sure that you have all the right security tools wrapped around an audience like frontline workers to allow you to do that.
Perfect. Transitioning from that question to the next one is, I think it's specific about the Converge app. Like, how long does it take to develop this app or the demo, and how much maintenance is required, like, for the customer to be spending money even after they're done with the project? So.
Oh, cool. So I'm going to split that up because, little kind of fun fact, Chewy, I was on a previous team that we partnered with to help develop Converge. So it was a co-development that since from there, we've taken even further. So it's a very kind of complicated question, but maybe Chewy, you want to go first and talk a little bit about kind of the process? And Bill, All right, you can talk about it. You can speak for Chewy.
Yeah. So when this app was first developed, it was actually first developed by Microsoft, and it was released as a pilot for a specific company. As we looked into this, some of the code needed to be refactored. We needed to change some things to make it more robust and more performant. And so we were able to go back in and do that. As we're working on it with other clients, we're finding out things that people really need to understand. So when they're looking at the tool, when we first released it, they're like, this is great, but, and so there were a lot of buts when we first started. At this point, the tool is very polished. Like I think Marcus said, we can release it in 2 weeks. We can. It can be right out the door as it looked on my screen into your environment within 2 weeks. it can even be faster if we have the right access. So it's like your Azure access and things like that that we need help getting to so that we can get it deployed more quickly. But the maintenance on it is actually, if we release it as it is today, it's mostly just making sure, hey, we need pictures of our conference rooms. We need things like that. Those are the kind of things that you would need to do some maintenance on it. Other than that, it'll just use the graph to pull the information. So it's not like you have to go into a lot. As long as your data is right in, the Exchange environment, your email and stuff, it's going to work pretty well for you.
And just, just to kind of add on to that a little bit. So the initial investment was in the 7 figures. So it was a lot that had gone into this. And the fact that we have that code base set up, we can deploy it very quickly. It's a great value. And then from there, like we're working on this with several other clients right now, we can then take that and customize it. So you get to kind of take that goodness that's already built into that IP and do other things that are specific to your organization. So it makes it really cool. So yeah, thanks for that, Bill.
Awesome. We got some more. This is more around the Viva story. So it's a specific question for Chewy. Would love to hear some success stories from Viva, your customers who are already seeing or using it.
And audio deletion, just don't echo here. Okay, that's a great question. Unfortunately, a lot of what I do right now is still kind of in that leading edge space. So I'm not certain I can disclose this. Thought I do that when use that particular off-label use, which is not Viva as the main dish, but Viva as a supporting dish, especially big transformation situations. We're brought in usually just part of things. There's some really interesting ethics around how we get people to connect. Just like what Marcus was talking about, trying to go through and explore how to get people to connect. And it's very bespoke to different organizations. Right? I literally worked with a company in Europe where they wanted people to return in an equitable manner so they support local small businesses. Right? So thinking through how I go through how people come in the office, making sure they don't all show up on Wednesday and Thursdays, but not there Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays, which is bad for local businesses. So there's a lot of these little things we're doing. Keep an eye on kind of the Viva websites. A lot of the work that I'm working on is going to show up on that website. The specific examples and customer releases as to the specific use cases where we do. I know I'm not giving you guys a really great answer. It wasn't interesting sound bites, but you grab me for a beer and slip down.
On you, of course, yeah. So, some of the other kind of use cases, you talked about M&A, right? Onboarding, another one we're hearing a ton of, right? How do you, similar to like if you've got some merger and acquisition activity going, how do you optimize that? You talked about that feedback loop. Same thing with onboarding, right? And offboarding. How do you use Viva to kind of optimize that? It's use cases like that. And if you have, if you want ideas and want to kick things around, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about it. Danny, it sounds like we have a few more questions.
Yeah, well, I think I kind of like this question. I'm just going to rephrase it. So it's like, imagine that organization, they don't use Viva at all. Where do they start? What's the first? It's a lot of modules outside, and it's kind of overwhelming. So I know we've talked about all of the different modules we liked. So where do you start? What's the starting point?
Anyone want to raise their hand? Maybe, Rochelle, I think you kind of were in this space a little while ago. What was your experience with kind of figuring out where to start with Viva?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have 2 trains of thought. I think because of how successful Engage has been for our workforce, that's where I lean. So in our environment, we had, so we worked with Warren to do a migration from Interact to SharePoint Online. And so our initial experience was with Engage. So we have a lot of adoption in that space to begin with. So I think that was an easy way for our workforce to become familiar with Viva modules. So I lean toward Engage because of how the high adoption that we have. And within a year, it's only been about a year that we rolled that out.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Annie, maybe you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to start that kind of how we were discussing earlier. It's all about asking the questions about which business problems you want to address first. So even today, I'm working with several organizations taking a look at how they get started. And so for some organizations, like for example, a large transportation logistics company, they're really looking to transform how their DEI space is managed with their employee resource groups and things like that. And so that's something that's really important right now, even at the top leadership level. They're looking to drive that experience. So they've come to Microsoft and to us at Valorem Reply Modern Work to ask, how do we get started? Is there something that could be a platform that works for this? And so we're able to work with them through thinking through, as Rochelle mentioned, Viva Engage, which with its community setup is the perfect place to be able to have those kinds of culture building and community-based groups and discussions, to be able to share insights, tips and tricks, those sorts of things. And then we even thought about, as we were mentioning, kind of like Power Platform versus custom apps. We were even thinking of using one of Microsoft's app templates known as Group Connect, which essentially surfaces a bunch of groups that either reside in Viva Engage or in Microsoft Teams, surfaces them and allows people to discover and interact with them more easily. So a great platform to work alongside Viva Engage and then kind of get rolling with Viva there. Similarly, I was actually on the project team working with Rochelle on the Interact to SharePoint Online and Viva Connections implementation. And as Rochelle can speak to as well, you know, there was a business need to come off of Interact, another internet platform, along the vein of do more with less. And so because obviously they had the capability for an intranet within M365 through SharePoint Online, that was a really great and natural segue directly into Viva Connections for Rochelle and her organization, because there was a need to come off of a legacy platform by an existing, you know, deadline, and then we were able to segue that process and bring in Viva along the way. So I think it really is all about just understanding the business objectives, different initiatives going on, and then seeing if and how Viva or other collaborative apps solutions can really fit that well.
I think we're hearing some kind of themes, common themes, right? And you know, Chewy, that whole idea of Viva as a side dish, I've never heard that before. It's really cool, but that's really what we've been hearing, right? And we think about like Converge, right? We heard a lot about that. Well, imagine Converge, you bring in Viva Insights, right? And then you use Converge to kind of, which is the how-to for your hybrid work strategy, how to bring that connection, make sure that people, when they're in the office, having those high-value in-person meetings, people that are remote, right? But is it working, right? That's where Viva Insights come in as that side dish to really, you know, use it. You put a stake in the ground, see how it's working, use the feedback loop that Julie described to optimize it over time. You know, and you just described the kind of a very similar use case with another Viva module. So again, that's a really, you know, what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and then back your way into the solution. So, Danny, I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Yeah. So, Marcus, can I add a point?
Oh,
Julie. So I'll make this real quick here. When you're tackling complicated problems, one thing we're observing right now is getting buy-in across the groups.
Yeah.
Because we're all nerds, right? We all love technology, so we're probably really tight with the COO, CIO, the technology people. But when you start venturing out into the employee connection space, you start venturing out into the damn meetings, you gotta get buy-in. You know what? Screw buy-in. You actually need to get involved with the HR team, make them feel like it's part of their process, their journey. And that's how you can make broader systemic change. Otherwise, it just becomes, here's a tech. Hey, can I show this to you? Would you like to use it? Then you're in the wrong shoe. It'll feel like this was their idea. They participate in it. And that then puts everything in jeopardy, especially if you're going to tackle a big project. Go early, bring these people on this journey. And one thing I found out that works great is I like Marcus being the good cop or the bad cop. I don't know how you want to call this, but you bring a partner and a mutual third party in as the excuse to start that conversation, to reach out to these people. Because, you know, if I never talk to HR, you'll be kind of weird like hitting them up now. But if I say, hey, Marcus is here to do X, Y, and Z, would you like to participate in this listening session, HR? That leads to the proper change. It leads to proper buy-in. It lubricates so many things that are popping on people on the other end.
Thank you. Danny?
Awesome. Thank you, Chewy. So I'm just reading one of the comments that came in. Praise for a great set of presentations today. So I just want to say thank you guys for, doing an amazing job with all the presentations. One final question before we wrap up, and it's pointed to change management. How do you help employees see Viva as value added rather than just one more thing to learn?
Any of that
So I guess
I
guess I'll take that one, guys. Yeah, well, we like to refer that as in the change management space is the WIFM. What's in it for me? So I think it's really important, and I've got a great example with the current customer organization right now. Really important to figure out what's the piece within that technology tool that's going to make it valuable for the various audiences that you have at play. So, for example, if we think about the front line, we've got a customer that we're working with right now that's kind of in the energy, oil, utility space, and they are wanting to roll out not just Viva Connections, but Microsoft Teams holistically for mobile devices for their frontline workers. When we were working with the team to kind of develop use cases and how we're going to roll this out, we were really focusing initially on the corporate information worker audience. We were like, okay, great. It's going to bring your key tools into Microsoft Teams. It's going to give you easier access and maybe some custom integration points directly into some of the systems that you use today for, let's say, HR or, as we saw earlier with the demo, IT service desk and ticketing management. We're going to bring those to your fingertips in Teams. And that's a really great use case. It's helpful for people and it gets, it bypasses single sign-on and it gets people directly into the systems they need. But for the front line, it can sometimes be a little bit tricky to put a corporate-oriented hat onto a frontline worker head, body, whatever the other side of that equation is. And so we had to take a different approach and think about what could we add to this that is going to actually make it valuable for frontline workers to use. And what we came up with was a custom Viva Connections dashboard card to really link in with important tools that the front line is using. So thinking about kind of what can you take from the solution that you've got today? How can you kind of orient yourself to think about the different persona or audience that you are looking to drive adoption with, and then think about what's in it for them, not just in terms of communications, messaging, and marketing, but how can we actually make the functionality resonate with them? What could we do, as we've seen today, to add more to it, to add in a piece of custom functionality, to maybe take a look at audience targeting, which is out of the box with SharePoint Online. And as Marcus was mentioning, identity and access management, how can we make things impactful so that they're relevant and targeted to the people that we're trying to reach? So I think it all comes down to the WIFM, what's in it for me, but then also thinking about, again, not just marketing and words, but having the functionality and action to back that up. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Annie. That wraps up all the questions. I mean, most of the questions that we could get to from the live Q&A.
Well, and with that, I think, any other questions, anything you heard about you would like to learn more about, please reach out to us. We would love to talk to you about it. Chewy said he'd love to talk to you about it. You can go buy Chewy a beer if you're in Seattle. And yeah, we love this stuff. We're all, even though Chewy said he's a geek because of his glasses, right? We're all, we love technology, we love solving problems. And so we really appreciate the time. And so, what did you think? Like, did the Do More with Less theme resonate? Did you guys learn stuff today? So I think if we can move to, we've got one more slide. Yeah, so again, right, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you more about this or other things, right? I mean, we focused in a couple key areas today, but we do a lot more, anything M365, anything employee experience. We'd love to talk to you more about it. So thank you today for your time today.